Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A video / podcast thing. Links in the description if you're on YouTube to access this on different podcasting platforms. And I guess that's all the housekeeping.
I think that's enough.
You want to talk a little bit about the team that we're looking at?
Right. So a few things specifically about Batman, Ninja Lord, Joker, and some things more generally. So I want to point out one other tip if you're going to be using this loadout with this character, Batman, Ninja Lord, Joker, as your main damage dealer. We talked about in the recap last week about how the biggest limitation with him and a lot of the other high stat late game challenge characters is that only their last hit on the special 2 can knock somebody out.
Yeah.
And that presents a big problem because of all the different characters that have potential tag-in effects. Whether it's Rebirth Raven stealing your power, whether it's the stun on tag-in, whether it's revives even, right? So that you're vulnerable. Or Rebirth Raven. Did I just say Rebirth Raven stealing your power? I did. Never mind. I'm sort of on one track. So Enchantress is amazing. Like that piece of gear with really the one ability. Like you get health back, which is the second ability, but the fact that the skulls even come in, what it does is it disables specials almost guaranteed. There's a few exceptions where if it hits at the wrong time, where the opponent has power and has invulnerability, that you are still vulnerable. If they have, if they got Astro Hearts, that's a bit of a pain. But it is, and most of the time it's still good. But it is amazing just how good it is. It's an underappreciated piece of gear. I think the Suicide Squad companion gears in general have gotten a bad rap.
Mm.
I think the Killer Croc companion gear is excellent on a defensive tank. I think Enchantress gear is amazing to make up for the problem that these high stat late game challenge characters have.
Mm-hmm.
As a practical play issue with Batman, Ninja Lord, Joker is, so the way if you're going to use Tantu Totem and Master's Death Card and they're maxed out, when you tag in, there's not enough power. You're just shy of getting 2 bars of power. So one option is use your third gear slot for power generation, but if you're using Enchantress, you can't. So the answer is doing a combo. Batman, Ninja Lord, Joker's tap combo doesn't have enough range, so you tag in, you do it immediately, you're going to miss a lot of time. His swipe combo has enough range. It does 2 hits. 1 hit is enough. But then you have a slight problem. So if you're really fast and consistent every time, and your device is, it's not just you being fast, but your device is responsive enough, you can do your special 2 immediately. You can chain it, and you are on that border between, if you're just right, you're close enough that the first hit makes contact. If you're just that little bit too slow, the first hit will miss. And it's unfortunate because the first hit does a decent amount of damage. So what you can do, non-intuitive, block. You do your swipe combo and block. The swipe combo knocks back the character a decent distance. When you're blocking, you maintain that separation. And then it's way easier to get the timing right when they're rushing at you to get your special 2 in unblocked. So if you don't block, what happens is you're running up to them. They're right there in front of you. And for me, at least, the animation for them getting up, it's harder to play it right consistently for all of them because all of them are a little bit different, all the opponent characters. And so I end up almost inevitably having it blocked if I do it like that, unless I let them take a few swings while I'm blocking and try to engage in the middle of their combo or right after they finish the combo before they have a chance to block. So that's my main tip. Now that I've been playing with them a bunch, like that non-intuitive move makes a big difference because that distance lets you not only watch them get up, but they're not going to do a basic attack on you immediately until they get close enough. So during that animation while they're running to you is the time where you can slip in your special 2 unblocked. Okay. Excellent character, a lot of fun.
Very cool. So that's cool. I guess I'll talk for 1 second about this really fast. I've mentioned playing Persona before.
Yes.
A couple times. I beat Persona 5 Royal. And it's interesting. I don't have too many sort of super meaningful thoughts about it, so I'll just talk about it for a second. I really enjoyed the ending of the game. I enjoyed my time with it overall. And it's funny because it is both a game that I like quite a bit, and I have like a lot of caveats and criticisms of it. and it's because it's such a big experience. It's like 100 hours long.
Right.
That it's easy to not like parts of it and still like the whole thing. And in fact, like a lot of my issues with it is the amount of stuff that's in it. Because I feel like there's a really, really, really good 40-hour game in that 100-hour game, you know?
Yeah. Is that kind of compliment that's like you've got a face for radio kind of compliment, or is it still the 40 hours are really, really good?
There's some stuff about it that's really cool. When it's working really well, it's really compelling. And, you know, I've enjoyed talking about it with people, you know, some of my friends who like recommended it to me throughout the experience of it. So it's been a little bit social, a little bit whatever. And part of it is because it's so intrinsically meant to be you building these social relationships with the characters in the game, and that's such an important mechanic. It sometimes you need more time to have a real relationship in the way that like you might be able to develop a more real seeming relationship in a TV show than in a movie, just because you have more time to do sort of less high stakes stuff, right? And you have more time to spend with these people,
right?
And so to some extent, I think the length is an asset in making you really feel like you like the characters. But at the same time, I don't think it always does it entirely successfully. I think there's a lot of time you spend that just feels like you're kind of wasting your time. You're spinning your wheels a little bit. And there's, for both of the Persona games I've played, there's been a part in like the back, like 15%, where I've been like, I'm ready for this game to be over. And I almost want to put this down because I don't feel like I'm enjoying it that much right now, but I want to get to the ending. And then you know, in Persona 5 at least, they let you sort of fast forward through dialogue more easily. And so there's parts where I can literally go, I don't care about this, and then I can just, instead of just having your eyes glaze over and skip the dialogue, you can just hit a fast forward button, and then, you know, it's passively sort of skipping the parts that I don't care as much about. But it was a game where right at the start I kind of wanted to experience everything, and the further in I got, and my friend said that this is how they got with it too, is that the farther in you are, the more you're just like, yeah, okay, whatever, and then you just skip. You go, this scene's not that important.
It's sometimes like when you're reading a book, right? Like when you read, I remember thinking like that when I was reading Lord of the Rings, and there's stuff that you just skim right past. Yeah,
well, that's the kind of joke with Tolkien, right? Is that he does too much world building to the point where when they're going from like point A to point B, he's like named the hills, and like the topography is really well laid out. So he's telling you about like the texture of the soil and like how much rain they've gotten there and all this other stuff, and then you're just like, yeah, I don't care about this.
See, I felt that way when I tried to read the Bible. Like at one point,
the Bible.
At one point I tried reading the Bible through like as a story.
Yeah.
And the beginning, like the Old Testament, where this person begat this person who begat this person, and they go through that whole genealogy.
It's like somebody's family tree.
Yeah, same thing, right? Like it just, I don't know that any of it mattered, and I couldn't make it through, like in a straight read through.
Yeah, there is something, I think, with that kind of like filler content, sometimes you benefit from having it be an interactive medium, and especially in something like the Bible, right? I don't know how you're supposed to read the Bible, actually. I don't know if there's sort of like Star Wars, way. What order you're supposed to watch the movies? What's that called? The Blade way? Like there's the... I don't remember, But, so, because I'm thinking of an example, House of Leaves, which you know...
I heard about it, I saw you reading it, we talked about it.
Yeah, there's a chunk in House of Leaves. The whole thing with the meta-narrative is that a lot of it is done as a fake academic text. Right. So there's a lot of, like footnotes, and some footnotes are literally just citations, and then there's like discussions of other people's papers and stuff, and there's literally a footnote that's like a kind of meta commentary on that academic text that says a lot of this seems kind of meandering and complicated, and honestly my eyes kind of glazed over reading it, and I'm not sure exactly what the point is, but I'm trying to faithfully reproduce this for you, so if you don't want to read it, go ahead and skip it. But the person thought it was worth including, so I guess who am I to judge? I don't know. I'm reproducing it here in its entirety for you, but read it however you want. And that's sort of like your explicit permission in the book to skip over stuff and whatever. If you have reached that point reading everything, you go, oh my god, am I supposed to, you know, read through the entire, like the titles of the fake articles that they're citing?
See, and when you say something like that, part of me thinks that the effect that the writer is trying to generate is from the comment more so than the footnote, because the footnote is less important than to create an excuse for you to engage more with the narrator in their voice, like,
Yeah.
you know, it makes them feel more real to you.
It's a balance of factors, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it's one of those things where that was kind of what I struggled with. And I think, honestly, if I came into it right at the start with somebody going, skip it if it doesn't seem like it matters, in Persona 5, and if I had that permission to do that, then I might have enjoyed the game a little bit more.
Right.
Because I felt like there was a right and a wrong way to do it. And obviously, in a game that is so story-driven, skipping through dialogue seems like it's not great. But then you sort of realize that there's some dialogue that literally doesn't mean anything at all. Like, you can read books in the game.
Right.
And so obviously skipping the dialogue of the in-game story that you're reading that's supposed to boost your, you know, knowledge, right? I'm like, I don't care about the story that this guy's reading in the story that I'm playing that is just meant to up my stat points, basically. It's like a level up almost. But then for some of the character stuff too, where I'm like, oh my god, it feels like they're just saying the same thing over and over again. And so I think I started out by spending more time, and I got worn down to the point where I just I wasn't willing to sit through it. And then it picked the pace up a little bit. So if right from the start it was like, yeah, some of this stuff's not important, just skip it. If it seems like it's not going to matter, it probably won't. And it almost seems like they set it up for it, because there's a lot of conversations that feel repetitive. Like, somebody will say something, and then there'll be a text message conversation about it later, and then somebody else will say like a very similar thing later, where it almost seems like they're accounting for you skipping some stuff sometimes. And so for the important stuff, they want to tell you like 3 times.
Make sure you've got it.
Yeah. But the problem is, if you're not skipping it, you're hearing like the same piece of information told you over and over again. And it's not like an important thing that you need to remember for later. It's just like a conversational beat, right?
So that's an interesting thing you're talking about in terms of just what sounds real, like dialogue, for example, that sounds real. So I'm rewatching Andor with you. Yours first time, my second time.
Yeah.
And not that matters. It's that there's a scene in it that I hope is not a spoiler, but it's not. I'm going to talk about it in vague terms. But one thing that always bugged me about shows is where one character has a weapon trained on another one, and it's an immediate threat, and the person with the weapon has control. Yeah. And the negotiation that happens at that point is almost inevitably false. Like, it rings false, whether it's the person who's doing the threatening and what they would do at that moment, or what the other person could say that would be convincing enough to change the dynamic. Because it almost always changes, right? Every once in a while you have the surprise where the person with the weapon on them shoots them and kills them.
Because usually in those scenes, what it is that the person who is like in the position of vulnerability is either the main character, and you know that it's just like stalling until something happens so they don't get shot, or it is like the main character is the person with the weapon, and then the other person is like, oh, please don't, and then they find a way of sort of absolving the main character of some amount of guilt. So instead of shooting them, they tie them up. Instead of whatever. They put some situation where either the main character is not going to kill that person, or something happens to sort of force their hand. And so it's
never convincing. It never feels real. And it's, to me, that moment was almost like the pinnacle of the kind of thing that I like about Andor. That to me, why I said it's like my favorite Star Wars TV show. Is that it feels real, it feels lived in, it feels believable, and they don't do things, like they don't do really dumb things in those moments to pull me out of it.
And for someone who watched the original, like, 6 movies, right? Like the original trilogy. And
it was really the original 3. But
whatever. But if somebody who's watched them, but maybe didn't have as strong of a sense of nostalgia for them, and thought they were good, but never, got particularly into them, this has the potential to, I think, be my favorite just Star Wars thing, period.
Yeah. No, it's really impressive. Like, I actually enjoy it more on the second watch in some ways, because I'm able to follow, like, certain things become way more clear, and I'm not bedazzled by just all the stuff happening. I'm actually able to follow, like, the character arcs. So good.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
it's a great show. There's a lot of good TV, right? Because we're also watching Generation V.
Oh my God.
We haven't talked about that yet.
Right. Well, we're not at this point.
It's not all out yet.
Yeah, at this point, we're caught up with the general.
I think there's 3 episodes out right now.
4,
whatever.
5. 5 coming up.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's been really interesting so far too. It's good because you never know with a spin-off, right? There's not the same sort of standard for it because it's being done by a different team,
right?
And the main story, they have a story to tell, and it can still go too long, but it's sort of the characters that you like, the stuff that you like about it. It's harder to sort of totally make that crash and burn instantly, and with a spin-off,
Well, so this is the funny thing, right? So in the old days of old broadcast TV, spin-offs could be anything as connected as a main character getting their own show, like a secondary character getting their own show, or somebody who's completely has nothing to do with the show at all. They stick them in for one guest appearance. So that it's like, so I'm thinking Happy Days and Mork and Mindy. Like Mork and Mindy was a Happy Days, I believe it was a Happy Days spinoff. It was one of those shows where they had nothing to do with the show. They appeared one time and then they flew off it. Then you've got something where a secondary character, like what's his name, Frasier on Cheers, who gets his own spinoff, and that was successful. And then sometimes you get somebody who's really tied into it, like Golden Girls. They had Golden Palace after, where a lot of the main characters were in it too. So you never know what you're going to get.
With Kim's Convenience with just the lady who worked at the
car dealership,
or was it
car rental place. No, it was the manager.
Yeah, and that was not very good. Did we watch that, or did I just watch that without you?
I think you might have watched without me.
It wasn't good.
I didn't hear enough good things to make me want to watch it.
No, it was like really thoroughly mediocre. Because she wasn't a bad actor.
Right.
I think she made sense in the show. But her character was never supposed to be particularly, I think, endearing or central. I think she was around. And so I think that she was never meant to be sort of the focus. And so I think the spin-off unfortunately can't stand properly on her legs.
Right. I think as a character she was meant to be a little bit white bread. Like, you know what I mean? Like just kind of a little goofy, but nothing that stood out. Anyways, so it's right, because the idea of a spin-off is just so broad and encompasses so many possibilities that you really don't know what you're going to get.
And this is, I don't even know if it's technically called a spin-off or if there's a different word when it's just in the same universe. Because there are no main character overlap. There is like clips of the other characters. They've clearly brought in the actors, but like none of
what show are you talking about now?
Generation V and The Boys.
Right.
Because there hasn't been a single instance where one of the actors from the main show is actually like interacting with any of the characters from the new show. There's been like video footage of them.
What about the manager person, Ashley? Does that count? Is too far off?
She's like, it's like cutaways. She's on like the phone. I guess so. But that's like, I wouldn't consider her a main character. I would consider her like sort of a side character in both shows.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyways. No, but it's quite really good so far.
I think a lot of it has to do with that you've actually got source material that you can start with that is already good, and then you can make the adjustments that you need as opposed to trying to come up with something completely from whole cloth.
Yeah. And I think actually one of the things I really like is the thematic parallels, because this is also not really a spoiler, because we're not even far enough in to really have large spoilers for it. I don't know if this is the direction they're going for the whole thing. But in a way, The Boys was looking at sort of a superhero satire and looking at sort of the mainstream corporate media cycles and how that would be so intrinsically tied to superhero-dom, right? Mm-hmm. Where you are like media personalities, right? Mm. Because you're famous and you're the good guys, and like obviously,
right.
And so Generation V so far has been a lot about sort of new age media, right? Social media and sort of fandom and stardom and that sort of like microcosm, because there's these people in university, so it's like they're all like micro celebrities, right? And they're all trying to sort of work on their image and stuff. So it's that kind of like using new media as like a stepping stone to get into sort of traditional media, but the sort of thematic parallels, but the sort of natural shift in what the character motivation is when you age them down to media of like adults to the media of like sort of the younger generation. It feels very natural and interesting, and I think it has at least some interesting stuff to say about new media so far. It's not, I would say, as much the focus as it felt like it was in The Boys, because The Boys felt like it was so much about that sort of like corporate structure, and this one feels like a little bit more them tooling around and doing their own thing. And I think, you know, the kind of enemies still being, and again, I don't think this is a big spoiler, but still being those big systemic powers, means that it can't be too different. It's not like the enemy is like a really mean influencer, but it's been, it's good. It's surprisingly good. It's better than I expected, because I went in with very little expectations. I was hoping it would be good, but I had no sort of sense of whether it would be.
Honestly, I knowing that there was source material, I expected it to be good, and I'm happily.
But there's not direct source
satisfied.
material, right?
Oh yeah, there is. This is a story arc that was from the boys.
For Generation V.
Yeah, it wasn't its own. I don't think it was its own comic book, but it had its own story arc within the boys that they're pulling from. Yeah,
I did not know that. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So, anyways, let's get into maybe our first comment.
Yeah, I know.
In.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Naharudin9854 says, BDCKR Gaming, I saw your account last season at MP Online Position 5, and I was happy to see my idol and then heart emoji. And for this season, last multiplayer online, I saw Position 75. But I'm wondering, the total match for this account has reached 10,000. Did you start over from the beginning without duplicate account?
Yeah, for this account. We've got... we'll just talk about what our resources right now. We've got 3... completely different accounts. They were all started separately. They're not connected to each other. They're not duplicated from another one anyway. And I think, there's a technique for duplicating accounts. I think it still works, but there's a real danger there, because one of the interesting things, and I guess this is one of the things you pick up from glitching and you sort of take for granted. This is because we've done it for so long, and it's been so long since we've done it. Yeah. And that combination has so many different things that we have tried that I don't remember sometimes why we do things a certain way, but this I remember. When you duplicate an account and you log in and out of the account, nothing happens. Yeah. It doesn't ask you, do you want to trade, like even if you've got progress in one that you haven't gotten in the other, like let's say you play 10,000 hours after on one account and you've accumulated a bunch of other resources that you don't on the other one. When you swap from one to the other, when you log out of one and log in the other, it doesn't ask you. Ask you nothing.
Because there's clearly something that is tagged it as the same account still on sort of a DNA level.
Right. So you run two dangers. One is you run into the danger of bleeding across. So that when something happens where it takes something from one account, something from the other, and in different spots of the game, that there is the potential for some sort of conflict to happen, like a logical conflict within the game that will mess up your account. Yeah. And the value of doing that is, the value of avoiding that is huge, because for all the time that we put into it, we do not, account bleed is not always bad, but it can be so bad that it's a good thing to avoid if you can. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I guess, is that account suspension seems to be happening a lot less now. But the more that your one account is tied to another, the bigger danger there is that when account suspension hits one for whatever arbitrary reason, it will take out your other ones at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So the benefits of having two accounts is pretty low when basically what you have is one account that's split up in a weird way, and you don't want to be signing, back and forth. So really, unless you're like trying to give it to, I guess, somebody else to have the other one, and then you have to be worried about what they're doing in case of a ban or anything like that, because there's still clearly some connection between them. So it seems not super worth it, I guess, unless you don't care that much about your account and you're gonna give like the copy to a friend and then never sign back in again.
So one bit of information I guess that's worth mentioning is that in the past, when people had their account suspended and then they would use a duplication technique and then use that account, it would be good for a week and then it would get suspended again at the end of the next season. Yeah. So there's some sort of idea, I think, that's triggered, but they don't run it all the time with every time you play. Mm-hmm. And I guess they can always decide when to run it or if they're running it. So it's same what you just said, right? Like it seems like there's not a lot of benefit to duplicating an account.
Except in some sort of relatively niche situations. I doubt there are many situations where you just want to give somebody else your account.
Right, without giving them your account.
Yeah. Because you have to trust them. You have to trust them that they're not going to do anything to get banned. and when it's not always clear why you get banned. Again, doesn't happen that much anymore. Is the only good
okay. So that's
thing,
interesting. Yeah, because I think one of the motivations for giving it would be so that you wouldn't have to share your account details.
Yeah,
and that you wouldn't have to worry about what they do. But when you take that away and you still have to worry about what they do, then that's a problem. But I guess the only thing is that would give them access without giving them their password.
Yeah,
but at the risk with the danger of your primary account getting compromised too. Yeah.
Anyways, so that's that, and then I guess the other part is just I think it's kind of interesting and fun to me that people are looking at what position we're in and how many battles we've fought on our account and stuff like that. I was not expecting people to engage on that level, right? When somebody's commenting,
auditing us,
or watching us, I think that's kind of cool, right? But I was not expecting someone to go to the extent of going, "Oh, that's them on the leaderboard right there. Let me see what they've been up to. Oh, they've been fighting not as many battles this weekly. I wonder what's going on. Maybe they're a little busier, that kind of thing." I would just it reminds me a little bit of this streamer I quite like named Northern Lion, and I don't tune into any of his streams live, but I watch the YouTube videos afterwards sometimes, and he does Peloton, the stationary biking, and he used to not add any of his listeners, but now he adds watchers, and he'll cycle with them. So he's got a couple of people that he regularly cycles with, that are around his skill level, that he has sort of a rapport with, where he goes, "Oh, you beat me this time," or whatever, and he'll talk about it in stream a lot. But a lot of people will audit him now because he adds everybody, and they'll look at his like output and stuff. And so there's somebody who does really, really good videos, video compilations of his content, called The Librarian. And the librarian will like post like his stats on screen, or like talk about it, and the librarian doesn't even do Peloton, but so he'll say like, "Oh, like you were having a bad week," and he goes, "Shut up, I was doing whatever." But so it's just funny. I feel like we're being audited, so I feel like it's there's nothing to hide, right? There's nothing bad about being watched, but it reminds me a little bit of that. It's kind of fun.
And we're never gonna. I don't think there's any chance now at this point of us hitting like top 3 to get another one of the badges. But I feel like we're in it in a bit of a marathon. People are legitimately getting higher than us, but I don't think people have had the stamina, because now we've got such a head start. Unless we give up, to give somebody else a chance to catch up
in terms of number of battles, or what, or level, or.
No, I guess the consistency of the weeks in, say, the top 2%.
Yeah. So if you make up a really arbitrary...
Yes, exactly. We make up an arbitrary threshold. I think it's not so much a threshold as it is a descriptor of what we do.
Yeah.
So we don't push as hard because, let's face it, I can't commit that kind of time.
It's too much time, I have a friend who, there's this like Hatsune Miku rhythm game. And she plays it, and they have these events every once in a while, and you get, I don't know, some cosmetic or whatever reward. She's talked about it with me before, but like since I don't play the game, I have no framework. They're like for
remembering stuff. Like, it's hard to remember details, right?
You get like in-game currency, and you get some cosmetics, story, character profiles, whatever, something. And for these events, sometimes she'll save up to like 6 months in advance for in-game currency to spend during the event. And she'll play for like 8 hours a day when she has time, and just to like rank in this, because there's all these people sort of competing with each other. And when one person, when a group of people surge and score, everybody else is then catching up to keep them, because it's the same sort of percentage brackets that they're competing for. And so she'll play this massive amount, and I just looked at that and I went, oh my gosh, like I could not commit that much time to it. So doing that for a game like Injustice, when we have everything, and it's just sort of the arbitrary reward of brownie points for a game, or like the ability to show off in a game that increasingly small numbers of people even care about the sort of showing off in, it's hard to dedicate.
It's hard to get up for that kind of an achievement.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we'll do one more, maybe quick.
Quick.
Yeah. So Chris Scott 8230 says, do you believe it's best to go for promotions on higher tier cards such as FP Batman, or using those cards to buy 3 challenge booster packs? My current goals are just to try and complete my collection to max promotion and be able to complete at MP and later on in the campaign. And I said use specifically because I don't care about spelling, right? People
But I think it
misspell
means
stuff
for us, like
for a
two of us.
million reasons.
Right.
But use is actually like a British or like UK.
Is it?
Like, yeah, like use all, right?
Is it?
Yeah,
I
it is.
have no idea.
I think it has an E in it, but I know that like I've definitely heard somebody in a Scouse accent say like use.
Okay.
So I
thought it was like a plural kind of thing.
I'm reproducing that there because I think it's entirely possible that that's on purpose. Normally
Right.
I edit stuff if it doesn't make sense grammatically to me. And
Right.
by the way, if I ever somebody's comment is misconstrued or seems weird, assume it's me first before you assume the other person didn't know what they're talking about. But I don't know if use was on purpose
right.
to pluralize it or if it's British English or what. I don't speak English, so I don't know.
You speak Canadian English.
Yeah.
I got a couple answers to this. I guess it depends, which is almost always the right answer. So as far as Flash, it depends. You can get he's already up at say Elite 5. I think Elite 5 is more than enough you need to not only be competitive at multiplayer, but as long as you've got the gear to be competitive and fast. That's why our Flashpoint team right now, we've kept them artificially low at Elite 5. We've got more copies that we could promote them to E7, but we don't because we get max battle points. We are competitive. It's not the promotion that makes you competitive in multiplayer. It's actually the gear. What you don't want to do is over promote them so that you end up having more trouble multiplayer because you're going to be facing characters with a lot of gear. And it's your opponents that are going to determine whether that team is good enough. So for the money that you're putting in, as long as you've hit a decent level where, based on the gear that you have in your collection, I would put that kind of power credits into the challenge boost packs, keeping in mind that there's some characters that are still missing from the challenge packs. At this point, I'm not sure exactly which ones. We could do a pack opening just to see, but
Maybe.
At some point when we have some time. But I would, as a value proposition, the challenge packs are much better. They are better than the specific challenge packs that are 200k. You want the ones that are 150k power credits. And because if your goal is really just to complete your collection to max promotion, that decision, max promoting Flashpoint Batman versus buying challenge packs is what's going to have an impact on it. Your ability to compete multiplayer and later on in the campaign. Later on in campaign, yes. But there's lots of other characters that you may not want to play multiplayer that it's worth promoting high enough that they're not going to be useful in multiplayer, but will be good for the offline play. I think that's a good answer.
There we go. Okay. That sounds like a good place to end it off for the week. To finish off, I'd like to give a shout out to Lisa Caton. It doesn't mean anything, but I don't have any material to pull from, and there's only so much I can free associate, so that's what you get. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all the lovely folks who support us on Patreon.
That would be Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, and Hoshi127 who are supporting us on the credited level. The other names that you see across your screen are those who have been generous enough to have supported us directly during this pandemic come epidemic.
Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.